to the Billy Club. Welcome back to the Billy Club. Welcome back to the Billy Club. Welcome back. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Billy Club, our examination of Marvel's Crimson Crusader in all of his many thwippening, amazing adventures, though this time it's not one of his adventures we're here to talk about. I'm Nico, and you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at NicoAction. That's NicoAction.
And I'm Tori Sheehan. You can find me on Twitter at Tori_Sheehan and on Instagram at SMTori. That's Tori with an I, as well as finding all of us at the Billy Club Pod on all of your socials.
I am so excited because, we're here to talk about Daredevil's appearance on She-Hulk in the finale, as well as some of the material from the Marvel Assembled, the special that D Plus puts out that gets into the making of the show. Since we had him so visibly present last time, I think it only makes sense, Tori, and I'm sure you agree, to bring in producer extraordinaire, the one, the only, Kevo.
Kevo!
Hello, everyone.
He's my favorite special guest.
It is super exciting to have you here. Kevo, where can everybody find you online?
Well, you can find me on the socials at Kevoreally, Kevoreally, and producing this and all of our other amazing content at Hubs Plus Network, which you can find on socials all across the webs. I've been making all of those MC2 episodes from X's for Podcast over to YouTube, which has been a lot of fun. It's a really cool program where we do talk about stuff like Daredevil.
Yeah, speaking of talking about stuff like Daredevil, I'm so excited that we are here to talk about even more Daredevil on the She-Hulk finale. When we got Daredevil in Spider-Man, we didn't know just how much of the amazing Daredevil cast we were going to see. If it was just going to be Daredevil, then we got Fisk and Hawkeye, and now we have Daredevil and She-Hulk. We know there's going to be Daredevil and Fisk in Echo. Then there's going to be Born Again. It's been such an unbelievable change from just a few years ago when there was no Daredevil anymore. And that Charlie Cox pretty much outright credited the Save Daredevil campaign getting him back on TV. What an amazingly grateful guy. Not that, he hasn't done all the work to get this role. Not that he hasn't trained, studied, worked, and so excited to have Daredevil back on the air. So I know what Kevo and I have thought because, live together. Although you can tell right now I'm at Fogwell's gym and Kevo is, of course, at the Loft. But Tori, since you're calling in from the offices of Nelson and Murdock, Avocados at Law, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how you felt about the She-Hulk finale.
Oh, I loved the She-Hulk finale. I thought it was one of the smartest ways to go about doing a big MCU finale without actually changing too much of the vibe of the whole everything before it. I loved how much more we broke the fourth wall. I loved the clever use of the Disney Plus screen. I loved getting to meet Kevin. I think my favorite part is that I had been interested to see how much Matt Murdock and Daredevil would be used in She-Hulk in various ways. And the fact that he basically just got popped back out to play the girl who comes back at the end is just
that's
wonderful.
Great.
It's so wonderful. I loved everything about it and was so happy to watch it. And getting to see the making of the whole series just really cemented how much thought and care and precision went into everything about the show.
Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Now, Kevo, I know how you felt because, again, gay live with you, but I would love for everyone else to get to hear what it was like for you as somebody who didn't grow up reading She-Hulk. I've had to tell so many people that She-Hulk was created by Stan Lee, so you can literally take your shit and just deal with it because the guy who created the Marvel Universe said, this is what it is. Now, I've always shared with you She-Hulk, many, many runs, many, many good times together. And so I would love to know how it felt watching these 9 episodes of The Jade Giantess.
You have, in fact, always spoken very highly of She-Hulk. I remember something very early in our relationship at a time when all of this would have seemed impossible. You talking about your desire for a David E. Kelly, literally David E. Kelly, not even style, She-Hulk program on ABC. Yeah, especially once the merger between Marvel and Disney happened and the possibility of things like that became a reality, and we were starting to think we could have Marvel shows on network television. And then we got what we got, and that was an era of television that happened, and now here we are, and we have She-Hulk finally.
Finally.
Really has been an amazing, fun ride. The first season has been a really amazing experiment in what She-Hulk is and what it can be. I really hope we get more, and I really hope that it decides to lean a lot more into the comedy of it. Not that the drama wasn't good, but you can do emotion while being more comedic. And I think that where She-Hulk lives is a lot more night court than it is the practice. And I think stuff like that would be amazing. Stuff like Mr. Immortal jumping out a window. More of that. I don't think every single episode can sustain the lunacy of Kevin dropping in. And it felt like Daredevil genuinely dropped from the sky.
Yes.
At that point by Kevin, I can only assume. I don't think every episode can sustain those levels, but yeah, the ridiculousness and the fun and seeing more of Matt in a way that I'm sure will be dramatically different from what we're going to get next summer with Echo or the year after that with Born Again. I think that would be great.
I very much agree with all of the assessments here. I think for me, the best part of what I got from this She-Hulk show was it said, don't worry about She-Hulk before. In much the same way, I think the Marvel Universe has always said, don't worry about what came before. I don't compare the Marvel Universe to the Marvel Cinematic Universe anymore. At least I try not to. I say they're totally different things and they can't be compared. And that's even why I'm like, if you like the comics, great, see the movies. If you like the movies, I guess great, read the comics. But they're not the same thing at all. In that, this She-Hulk show gave me a She-Hulk free of always being the joke character in a serious book. So even if it maybe feels to me like She-Hulk and Daredevil is kind of a long stretch for the comic universe, I would be great with it if she had a very dramatic role in Daredevil Born Again and inexplicably just goes back to being very funny in She-Hulk season 2. There's a lot of potential for the sort of new world they've created for her with the guys at the retreat offering the opportunity to play an Ant-Man's heist crew level of law comrades. Now, obviously, these guys aren't lawyers and they can't be, but one of them could absolutely go into training to become a paralegal to turn his life around with Jen's support. One of them could use his skills to be a PI. Another one might be very good at bookkeeping and helping keep Jen afloat, and Jen could go into her own private law office and do her own thing. That could be a really cool story, especially if Matt's going to San Francisco. That's a really good opportunity for Matt to work in a corporate environment where we've never seen him. I think for me, it's the freedom that she's not going to put on the Fantastic Four uniform. She's not going to be one of the West Coast Avengers the way that we know the West Coast Avengers previously. She's not going to necessarily throw down with a Skrull. This is going to be her own She-Hulk.
And I think even if it isn't those specific characters from the retreat, I think an episode like that really proved that this show could handle recurring minor characters like that in such a way where they could introduce new characters, bring back a few of them. I think that shows they have the ability to produce that sort of cast dynamic in a really fun way that I would love to see more of. I think your point about whether Jen could exist in another one of these projects and one of these worlds that has such a different tone, I think it really speaks to what the MCU is in terms of being an adaptation of Marvel Comics. I think one of the things I'm feeling when I see a lot of criticism of the MCU lately is I feel like the criticism is of the comic origins of the films themselves, where sometimes it's really silly, sometimes it's really dramatic, and you get some of both, and you get characters that go across different projects, because that's what Marvel Comics has always been. It's been about that interconnectivity and those different points of view and those different levels of drama versus seriousness versus comedy. And I think seeing Jen, however briefly, in something like Born Again or Deadpool 3 or anything, I think she could adapt well to that without taking away from who the character is and without having to change who the character would be back in her own title.
I agree. I also think that I'll be interested to see that as we move forward with each of these Disney Plus shows and they start to integrate with each other a little more, how much each of their genres are going to shift the show that they get moved into for a little bit, and how they're going to handle that, especially if it becomes something so difficult to reconcile. Comedy is one of those that like can go with anything, but can also shift everything around it so much you can't separate it out as easily. And so I'll be interested to see how that goes.
It's something I talk about a lot on X's for Podcast, where we talk about kind of like the nerfing of a character. When you put a really powerful character in a really silly situation, they're never quite as efficacious again. So they're going to have to be careful and figure out how to balance it. But I think using a serious character in a funny way, Daredevil was used expertly here. Now, episode 9 was a very different form of Daredevil than we'd gotten in the previous installment. And I'd gone into the final episode thinking there won't be any Daredevil. So when she was like, bring Daredevil back, and he jumped in like that, I literally thought it was going to be a stand-in. I even thought there might be a joke about how he's not going to have any dialogue because he's just a stand-in. And then he's like, I missed the action? And I was like, oh, that's Matt. Oh my God. And then we got more Matt and more Daredevil, and he got his own lines of dialogue that had to do with him, not just She-Hulk. It was really exciting. You know, the idea that Matt is such a locked off, closed off, sad person is unfortunately at the heart of who he is. But this idea that he's always looking for family and he's always trying to break out of that sadness and enter into some sort of communion, some sort of safe emotional place, seeing him embrace a family like he's never had. His dad lived at the gym. His dad didn't live at home. And then his dad lived as an enforcer, not at home. And his mother ran out on him. She was not home. His brother only exists some of the time. So I literally forgot Tori was not at a law office right now. So there's an element to which Matt embracing a world in which he gets a family is like wish fulfillment, and putting him in the gold, making him the golden boy coming in to rescue, but not needing to rescue. So he gets to do what he wants to do, save the day, but he doesn't need to. He's there in case. This was so many things I've always wanted for Matt, and it's amazing how the team nailed it in like 6 minutes.
And I think it was a really important representation of Matt to show before whatever comes next for him in the MCU, specifically in his title. Because with the title of Born Again, you know it's going to be dramatic. Just even if it's not a direct one-for-one of the comic, even if it's the way Age of Ultron was the movie, whatever it is, it's a Daredevil show from the MCU. You know they're going to make it whatever they can. Seeing him so happy when that is where we left him with Netflix, but that was so many years ago now. So to be reminded of Matt being in this healthy place for any kind of future where we can see him be deconstructed is so important. And I love your use of the phrase wish fulfillment, because so much of it was that scene of him, you know, reaching for Marklin Baker's shoulder while they are just broing around. Him and Jen's dad is such a huge moment to give a character like Matt Murdock, and they really knew what they were doing and what emotional buttons they would need to hit to make us so overjoyed to have Charlie back, to have Matt back, to have Daredevil back.
I agree. And I also think that it's a great way of hinting to the audience that whatever comes after this for Daredevil is not going to be more of the same. That while it is still true to the character and still a continuation, it's not going to be right back to where we were on Netflix for the characters.
Right, because one of the things that we left off on is will he or won't he with Karen, who he's outed himself as Daredevil to, and Elektra's dead, or maybe she's not, and where we leave him is so disjointed of where this must be for him to just be casual. And like I'm poly, so I'm not like you can't just casually sleep with people, but he's Catholic, so
Matthew, I know it's California, but
right.
Come on now.
I love what this means for Daredevil. I love the transformative thing this allows for Daredevil as well. But at the heart of it, this does divorce Daredevil from a lot of his past in a way that they could move forward with it in a meaningful way. I think we'll get a little bit more from Echo. It was like a minute and a half in Spider-Man plus a couple of minutes of deleted scenes. It's this hour of She-Hulk that's really like 22 minutes of She-Hulk, and then there's the inclusion of whatever we get in Echo before Born Again. I feel like they're trying to trace a narrative for Daredevil to get him somewhere new. It's just interesting that whatever has taken him to California or will take him to California or whatever, it's implied that he's still in New York in Spider-Man Many, Many Spider People.
It seems like he had made some kind of remark that he has to do a couple things on the West Coast. Although I'm always fascinated when they take lawyers across state lines and then say that you can work here. But it's fine. I'm sure he's passed all of the bars at this point.
And it's
all
what
of
begs
them.
the question, though. It's what begs the question of what is he doing out here in California? There should be some story reason. Do we have to address it? No. Would it be fun to? Hell yeah. So
Well,
I
I
think
mean-
it begs the question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could have also been that he heard about another lawyer who got superpowers and went to go find out what she's about.
And, there's really nothing stopping Matt from relocating to California just to relocate to California. He's a guy who has a dual identity. Stuff gets messy. He has a trail of bodies. He's trying to get away from a number of dead people whose specters haunt him. He's a man who feels held down by his history as much as it uplifts him. So if he was trying to be someone kind of new, he might just start over in California. In the comics, not that that has to happen. Foggy eventually runs for DA. Karen goes out to California to become an actress. There's things that would move these characters forward. They could always reunite as they do in the comics, but nothing stops them from taking those steps off screen and having us jump in a little while down the line. I didn't need Iron Man 2 to start at the end of the press conference. That wasn't a requirement. So if Daredevil wants to do some leaping forward with the help of projects like Spider-Man, She-Hulk, Echo, I'm here for it. And fuck it. And Hawkeye, because Wilson is as much a part of this as Daredevil is. I wish we maybe responded to the Wilson stuff when it happened. At the same time, it does feel like, and I say this, with everybody knowing that Kate Bishop is like love of my life kind of levels of fandom, but like, Kingpin did get kind of beat up by a little girl. So, like, I do want to talk about that because he got beat up by two women.
Ew.
But, like, we've seen him take on, like, 10 people.
He was blipped for 5 years. The musculature took a downturn.
All right. Testosterone levels fall off as you enter your evil 50s. So,
They didn't come back with him. They didn't blip back.
You embarrassed me in front of Lady Hawkeye! Where's a car door when you need one?
You're just going to slam them with that Panama hat.
And one of the things that made She-Hulk 9 even sweeter for me was the incredible addition of the Marvels Assembled. Getting to see that behind the scenes stuff, seeing how much the cast loved the show was really cool. And as much as I was in it for the She-Hulk and the She-Hulk cast, Pug is so hot. Wong is so hot. And then when he uses that British accent that I understand is his real voice, but like, he's always going to be kind of like, because I saw him first as Wong, you know what I mean? Like, that's one of those reasons that a lot of actors are like, no, I want to use my real voice in this role that will make me famous. Because now I can't make him British in my head. I'm like, no, that's a role. Cool. So hot. I really thought the humility in Charlie Cox talking about being Daredevil, talking about being like, well, no, he's blind, but I'm not going to shame you about it. I don't know how we can look in each other's eyes. There was so much romantic about the way Charlie talks about Daredevil. He doesn't talk about it like it's a role. He talks about it like the way people who make podcasts about Daredevil talk about it. It's special. It's an emotional connection that you protect, and that he seems to know that in every moment of his performance elevates the performance for me. It's a case where like auteur theory really is relevant to the experience.
Agreed. We've seen that with several of the actors in the MCU who have just attached themselves so deeply to these characters and found something of so much meaning to them. And so it's just such a joy. I'm sure it's possible that should ever Robert Downey Jr. come back to the MCU, that we would see something similar from him. That kind of like, I get to be here again, got to remember how to hit the points and be amazing and whatever. Maybe not so much Robert Downey Jr.'s got a different personality, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, that really hit me that he basically like not given up, but just was like, and that's done. And the hat goes away and I will do other things now. And to have that come back and have him so happy to be there and in such a loving and entrusting environment and getting to try something different with the character and exciting for him with the character. I was just like, oh, you little smush, you get to have whatever you want. So very happy that they called him out of retirement.
And his love of the character is what makes me so defensive of his character's use in this program, because I don't think that he would have come back so happily and heartily and be so excited about the role if he didn't think this was Matt Murdock, if he didn't find a way to make this true of his Matt Murdock. I don't think he would have just come back for nothing. He always had that choice, but he thought that these appearances, the first two, the one from Spider-Man, the one from She-Hulk, were really great and really fun appearances for his character, and it's what led to more was that cooperation, that interest, and seeing him take to those roles and still be that character and still be that guy and have that care and attention to his character. I love seeing fun Matt. I'm really curious to see what kind of Matt we're going to end up seeing in Echo. Is he going to be fun? Is he going to be mentorly? Are they love interests in this version? Are they specifically not love interests in this version? It's hard to know.
I think a huge part of it is it took an actor who we could sort of identify with Daredevil to be Daredevil. Robert Downey Jr. is kind of a smarmy king of his world. Chris Evans was kind of like a guy nobody expected anything of who tripled in size to become Captain America. Jeremy Renner is kind of a dick. Scarlett Johansson is someone who's done this all before, and she's been around, and she knows her part to play. Mark Ruffalo is good at not being the first guy that comes to mind for a role. So when Daredevil is somebody that you root for as an underdog, that makes a little bit more sense. I'm not even talking about the film or his performance, but like Ben Affleck is too Batman to be Daredevil. But Charlie Cox, you want to see him succeed in that same underdoggian way you want to see Daredevil succeed.
Agreed.
I feel that, yeah.
There's something really exciting about knowing this isn't the only Daredevil project we're getting in the near future. I know Spider-Man sophomore year is going to feature an animated Daredevil, which I'm really excited about. That's going to be really, or freshman year, senior year, junior year.
I was like, oh no, he's older now?
It's going to be really exciting for the expansion of Daredevil, because now I'm like, what about a Daredevil in a What If? What about a Daredevil, in any other thing? Because it's sort of the way Deadpool slowly boiled up and into the popular mainstream, or the way, Miles Morales did. Daredevil has a little bit more of a storied history, but Daredevil, as he's becoming, is evolving over time, evolving before our eyes. And I really think so much of that is owed to not just the Netflix show being so good, but the quality of the people on the Netflix show being so warm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right down to Vincent, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000%.
In concordance with that, that's why there's such a huge groundswelling of asking okay, well, are you going to announce Foggy and Karen again? Because why haven't you announced them yet? What's going on? Why aren't they there?
Yeah. And the idea that we live in a world where Daredevil was the most talked about Marvel term for a couple days, a few times. How can you even imagine being Charlie Cox and being like, guys, they're rooting for me. They're cheering for me to come back. People, they told me that my career was over, that I was done being Daredevil. But people are literally saying it wouldn't be the Marvel universe without me. I can't even imagine having nailed a role that I don't know, because I'm not just automatically a big fan of anything Daredevil. I'm very critical of Daredevil runs. I'm very critical of Daredevil projects. I don't buy just every Daredevil thing they make. So, like, it's just really cool that it's not just everything is perfect. The Netflix show kind of was, and the cast made it even better, and they're back. Some of them, hopefully all of them, Marvel has to know at this point. They can't, unless you're going to be like, oh, no, Karen Page is played by Meryl Streep. I don't think you can get away with it.
Well, no, here's the problem, though. We're expecting something just a little bit too soon. They've announced a project that's not coming for almost 2 full years. Yeah. Daredevil Born Again is summer 2024. So that big one, they're not going to really announce that cast probably for a year. I'm not saying at all, like that they definitely won't. But the likelihood, it's the same thing with Fantastic Four. Everyone is very, how come they're not announcing yet? They're going to wait as long as they possibly can. And that enters production soon. So they're going to have to announce that soon. Daredevil Born Again's not probably going to enter production until like early 2024. And it's the frustrating thing about having all these projects announced and having to wait for them. It's exciting to know what we're going to get. And frankly, everything that we have announced that we're getting is all coming within the next 2-3 years.
2-3 years, yeah.
All of it is, I think, Secret Wars was maybe pushed back to May 2026. But yeah, it's frustrating not to know. It's always so frustrating because you hope, but there's no promises. One of them could be busy.
Right.
And
there's also that, and there's also the fact that, like you said, like they could have all split up. He could have left for California and they just don't show up.
Yeah.
And that's the direction they want to go with the character, which I'm sure we'll love. But, we also still want to see our friends again. And this isn't a comic book. So you can't just have Karen and Foggy show up on one page and have it be worth the price of Deborah and Eldon. Maybe people have shown up for crazier stuff in this, but when it comes to that with the MCU and considering real people, it's not a comic book where you can just draw their face one time and it costs
for one panel.
It's all comics. It's a movie. It's a TV show. And we have to think, can we get Eldon and Deborah in for just one day? And is that worth the cost?
I agree. This was an exciting step. We need more steps. We need to keep running toward that door because there's a world of Daredevil that we haven't seen on the page. And I'm not just talking about cool minor characters like Black Tarantula from the Ed Brubaker run or any of the awesome officers from the Zdarsky run. I'm thinking like we've never really gotten Typhoid Mary. And we got like 9 episodes of Elektra total. And we never really got to have a Lady Bullseye. There's so many female characters in Daredevil who are so much stronger than so many of the tragic Daredevil female characters that get mistreated so horribly that we could give a really cool visual to on television if we just leaned into it.
For sure. For sure. I've always been a little shocked that Typhoid Mary did not become so much bigger than she currently stands.
Agreed.
Like, I just think that she's like a Joker level kind of anti-hero for Matt. So,
and she does become that in the Chip Zdarsky run, but the iteration we got in Iron Fist season 2 was just not Typhoid Mary. Mary Walker, sure. Typhoid Mary, no.
From what little I know of the character, yeah, no, it was a very bizarre departure. And one of the great things about comics and comic book worlds is more than one person can carry a character's name. So,
guys, it has been such a blast talking about Daredevil coming back. And I want to know, Kevo, before we swing on to our next building, what do you hope for from the Hornhead and his future installments? Like, what's the main thing, whether it's Echo or Daredevil Born Again or showing up in Secret War? What is your main hope for Daredevil?
I have a lot of hopes, really. I hope he's in an extensive amount of Echo, for one thing. I really hope that he's in a significant amount, at least a Ruffalo in She-Hulk level of appearances. Hopefully more like a Renner and Haley type situation. What I'd really love is to see Daredevil paired with Spider-Man. I know that both of those actors are really, really, really interested in working together again, whether it's Daredevil and a Spider-Man project, Spider-Man and a Daredevil project, meeting somewhere in the middle. I think seeing that, and that as a representation of just seeing more Daredevil crossing over in general. You know, if someone goes to New York in a project, could he appear? Just more from him would be really great.
Well, I love it, and I would love more from you in the future. And thank you so much for coming and playing with us today.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
So, you know, Tori, this originally started so long ago that you and I were just going to talk about the comics, but you know, Daredevil popping back into She-Hulk, all of these announcements lately, there has been so much to mine of like the meta quality of Daredevil that I think is really going to dramatically transform where we see the character in the future. I know that currently in Marvel, there's two characters that go by Daredevil, Matt Murdock and Electronachos, and stuff there is getting crazier than that. What is your big commitment going forward with Daredevil? Like, I know for me, I'm looking for a world in which Daredevil gets to move forward from the cycles of pain he's in. I don't need him to find happiness. Just new cycles of pain would even be fine. What's your future for Daredevil as we approach the multiversal reimagining of Daredevil through comics, re-releases of back issues, omnibus editions, and TV shows?
What I want from Daredevil differs, I think, in which media he's in. I think that I would love for him to be in the movies and TV shows. I think like anytime they need a lawyer, Matt Murdock shows up. Like, I know that he's not announced, like they would have announced him for the other ones, but like I think it'd be really cool if he was in Thunderbolts, or like he keeps showing up for Spider-Man every so often. Like I think that'd be really cool. And for him to continue to have the occasional 6 to 8 episodes to himself, to keep himself going, to give a highlight to his characters that are so good. In the comics, I'm not as caught up as you, but I think for me, I have always loved Matt when he gets to let his guard down and have a little fun and like be a little lighter. And so I'm hoping that he can catch a fucking break, and that having two Daredevils doesn't end up with having one Daredevil and there's no more Matt Murdock, because that's my concern. But I don't think he's there yet.
It's going some places. I think my goal for 2023 is you're caught up. So I am just so excited to see the future of Daredevil and this bold new time to be a fan. It's just super exciting because the character has done his dues and put in his time. It's not someone that I'm like, why doesn't he just get whatever he wants? No, this has been a steady amount of publications since 1964. He at some points is a disability, representation on the page, although really beautiful that Charlie Cox was like, his disability does not affect his ability. So he's not really blind in that same way, as if to say, hey, let's not forget that even if this is representation, it's not true representation. And it is magicified. At other times, he's just like the pussy poppinest straight boy in all of comics. His ass is just like right above his house. It's just, he feeds himself his own butthole at times. And so he's always been this sort of counterculture thing. And it's just really nice to see that he has really risen to the top and is becoming his own culture thing.
Yeah. I'm proud of him. Going so much.
I'm proud of him. And I'm proud of you. This has been so nice. Like having a Daredevil friend. Because like I make everybody read something, and everybody reads Born Again for me or Man Without Fear 1 through 5. Everybody sits down to something. But like you get it. We're Daredevil buddies. Mm-hmm. It's not like you read Daredevil. We're Daredevil. We're the two Daredevils. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So that's just nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for dragging me on this trip with you.
My pleasure. I just punched Matt in the face, but my pleasure. All right. Just being the best little pugilist I can be. So until we return to talk about Mike Murdock, one of the best things that ever happened to Marvel Comics.
God bless. Till then,
stay fearless.
Yeah, we're getting there. Can I say it was really fun when the number one cover popped up on the behind the scenes?
Oh my God, right? That was so amazing.
I was like, oh, it's that guy.
And like, I don't know, the whole thing was just really romantic. And there was just something about like hearing him talk about Daredevil is hearing a fan talk about Daredevil. And that's special.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I love that.